I received 3 letters with incredible, but true, stories. Different towns, different people, yet all with the same thread, a normal workday that took a sudden, dangerous turn. A quiet shift in a small store that erupted into chaos when a violent stranger came charging through the doors. A routine night drive on a rural bus route that became a tense game of deception to help a battered woman vanish. A Christmas Eve emergency call that revealed a scene so horrific it left a paramedic changed forever. Simple beginnings. Chilling endings. I'll read them to you. The night a random stranger turned our store into a battlefield. It's been long enough that I can finally tell this story, partly to give myself some peace, and partly because I think people need to know they have the right to defend themselves at work when there's no other way. It was the Saturday before Thanksgiving 2024, right in the middle of holiday chaos at the small pharmacy convenience store where I worked. This is the time of year when everything is frantic, endless pallets of seasonal merchandise to unpack, customers constantly streaming in, and a lingering sense of pressure hanging over the entire team. That evening, it was just me, 2 other CSAs, let's call them Tyson and Reed, and my shift supervisor, Marcus. Marcus and I had a complicated working relationship. Some days he was fine, helpful, even easy to get along with. Other days we clashed so badly that I'd spend the rest of the shift counting the minutes until I could clock out. That day, unfortunately, was one of those bad days. He came in looking restless, almost jittery, and within minutes was barking orders. I was in the middle of assembling an online pickup order, something our boss had made clear was a priority, when Marcus shouted across the floor. "I need both of you over here right now. We have to empty the baler." I didn't even look up from the box I was taping. "Yeah, give me 2 minutes, I just need to finish this order," I said as evenly as I could. Marcus stepped closer, his voice rising. "No, I don't have time or energy to wait. Either you come over here now or I'll put you on register for the rest of the night." He knew I hated working the register, not just because it was boring, but because an old injury made standing still for hours painful. Whether he knew that or didn't care, I couldn't tell. But his tone lit a fuse. Just because you can't wait 2 minutes doesn't mean you have to act like a big baby. I shot back. You know the rule, pickup orders can't be interrupted. The exchange spiraled quickly, ending with him calling the assistant manager right in front of me, making me out to be the problem. I'd had enough. I was ready to clock out and go home when the assistant manager called me directly, telling me not to let anyone mess with my paycheck and urging me to stay. I was still deciding when Marcus walked into the break room. To my surprise, he stuck out his hand. "Eric, I'm sorry. It's been a rough week. I didn't mean to come at you like that." I shook his hand. "Me too. I was going to help you. I just had to finish what I was doing." The tension dissolved, and for a while, the shift went back to normal. Until 5:30 p.m. Tyson left for lunch, leaving me to watch the register while Marcus started counting the cash drawers. He had just finished with the first one when the front doors slid open and a man, tall, lanky, drenched in sweat, maybe mid-20s, dressed like a cartoon version of a 1950s nerd, burst in. He didn't walk. He galloped. Full speed laps around the store, grunting like an animal, weaving between aisles. The 3 of us just stared. He finally made his way to the front doors, still panting. "Didn't find what I wanted," he muttered before leaving. Marcus told me he'd seen the same guy a few nights earlier, acting just as strangely. 2 minutes later, the doors opened again. This time, he didn't run laps. He charged straight toward Marcus, swinging wildly. Marcus jumped behind the counter, using displays and even tins of holiday cookies as makeshift shields. At 5 feet 9 inches and barely 150 pounds, he was badly outmatched. The guy had to be at least 6 feet 5 inches and built like a basketball player. I didn't think. I pulled my pocket knife, stepped into the aisle, and rushed toward them. The man backed toward the doors, retreating into the parking lot, and by the time I got outside, he'd vanished. My pulse was still pounding when, Almost an hour later, I heard shouting near the manager's office. The man was back. Marcus was telling him to leave, but he wouldn't budge. "I'm just here for my medicine," he said, voice dripping with sarcasm. "And you called the cops on me." I walked up with my pepper spray in hand. "You need to get out of here. Now." He smirked, taking slow steps toward a display of small, heavy decorative pine trees. My gut told me he was going to use one as a weapon. I didn't wait. I raised the can and sprayed. The sound of the burst filled the aisle, the spray hitting just above his glasses. He coughed, stumbled toward the doors, and right into the arms of the police, who tackled and cuffed him on the spot. Only later did we learn he'd been involved in several disturbances that day and was already wanted. Marcus thanked me for stepping in, and even promised to back me if corporate questioned my actions. My store manager gave me a warning not to use mace on the job again, but she was grateful I protected a coworker. Even now, standing too long at the register makes me tense. But if another threat ever comes through those doors, I'll be ready. The night my dad helped a stranger vanish. This isn't my story, it's my father's. Back in the mid-1980s, he drove long intercity routes across Ontario for a coach line, narrow highways, snow that came early, towns that closed by 9. No cell phones, just pay phones, radios, and the kind of decisions you had to live with. He told me this one only once, in the soft voice of a man who knows how fast a good deed can turn dangerous. It was late fall, already cold enough that your breath hung in front of you. At the Cochrane stop, a woman climbed aboard wearing a heavy coat and a long scarf wrapped twice around her neck. Her ticket said North Bay Transfer Ottawa-Montreal. Her hands shook when she passed it to my dad, Jack Nolan, and that's when he noticed the faint yellow and purple blooms along her cheekbones. She kept her head down, but the way she watched the door told him more than any bruise. He loaded baggage beneath the coach, chalking times in grease pencil, when a shout cut across the platform. A man had come in fast from the parking lot and now had the woman by the arm, yanking her toward the door. My dad moved without thinking, a big palm on the jamb, blocking the exit. "Let her go," he said. "Mind your business," the man snapped, trying to pull past him. 2 other passengers, lumber camp boys by the looks of them, stood up from the front row. The man must have felt the room shift, because he released her with a glare that said he wasn't finished. My dad closed the door, locked it, and asked one of the lumbermen to keep it shut while he finished loading the undercarriage. By the time the coach pulled out, the woman, Lena Ward, she wrote later, had folded herself into the back row and cried quietly into her scarf. My dad kept his eyes on the mirror and his speed steady. A few minutes out of town, headlights slipped in behind them. An old sedan. Close. Closer. Tailgating. At the next fuel stop, he told the passengers to stay aboard. He jogged inside, used the phone, then came out with a big garbage bag and a stack of lost and found, an oversized wool coat, a knitted hat, another scarf. While he'd been in the store, the clerk said the man from the parking lot had prowled around the bus, peering into windows. When he saw my dad reappear, he bolted for his car. The sedan followed them again, mile after mile, through the black ribbon of highway that eats up distances slowly. In the mirror, the headlights quivered, too close, too deliberate. In the back row, Lena shrank into her coat like she was bracing for a blow. The next station had 2 police officers posted, Constable Morrow and Sergeant Keating, men my dad knew by name. He kept everyone on the coach a little longer, conferred with the officers, and then brought Lena inside for a hot meal. When the husband came through the restaurant door and saw her sitting with a bus driver and 2 police officers, he faltered. He took a seat 2 tables away, pretending to read the menu, hands clenched white. The officers urged Lena to press charges. She shook her head. "I just want to get out," she said. My dad didn't ask from what. He didn't need to. Back at the coach, one officer stood beside the door as passengers reboard. The other strolled out to the sedan and started a slow, friendly conversation. The husband, it turned out, wasn't her husband at all, just happened to be traveling the same road, stopping at the same places, going the same speed. Strange coincidences happen, sure. But the officers had seen enough coincidences to know the shape of a hunt. The sedan followed the bus the whole way to North Bay. When they parked, the man lingered by the exit, scanning each face as it stepped down onto the platform. He was waiting for Lena. He didn't see her. He cornered my dad near the baggage door. "Where is she?" My dad shrugged, almost cheerful. "She never even got on after Cochrane. Guess you were following the wrong coach." The man swore and shouldered his way up the stairs to check the seats himself. There, tucked into the back row, he found the heavy coat and the long scarf. There was also a note, nothing elaborate, just a line written in a hard, angry hand. "Rot in hell." When the man stormed back down, my dad leaned against the doorframe and let him have the story he wanted to hear. "She caught a different coach westbound," he said. "Probably halfway to Winnipeg by now." Tires squealed before the sentence finished. Here's the part my father didn't tell anyone but the police. At the previous stop, while Sergeant Keating chatted with the driver of the sedan, Lena had slipped into the staff room, swapped coats, and waited. A station attendant, bless the quiet heroes, drove her in his own car to North Bay by a county road the sedan would never take. From there, she bought a new ticket and boarded an eastbound coach to Montreal. No cell phones. No texts. Just a door that stayed shut and a head that stayed down. A day later, an officer phoned my dad with a coda. A man, no one could say it was the same man, of course, had caused a scene at the Thunder Bay station, 14 hours west of North Bay, demanding to know where his wife had gone. There are some chases that never catch their prey. There are some lies that become lifelines. When my dad finished the story, he rubbed the back of his neck and smiled in that bent, tired way all night shift people do. "Not every rescue needs a siren," he said. "Sometimes it's a new coat and a straight face." He told me one more thing before he changed the subject, as if to rinse the taste of fear from his mouth. On the Sudbury, Timmins Run, a tourist once told him he'd never seen a moose. 5 minutes later, a bull stepped onto the highway and turned its back to the windshield. My dad eased the coach forward for a better look, and the moose began to kick. Each hoof strike stopped inches from the glass, thud, 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 until the animal snorted, wheeled, and vanished into the trees. My father laughed then, the same quick laugh he used on the platform with the angry man, a sound that says, "Not today." I sometimes think about Lena stepping onto that eastbound bus with a borrowed scarf and the smell of coffee in her hair. Safety doesn't always look like sirens and handcuffs. Sometimes it's a driver who sees a bruise, 2 lumbermen who stand up, a clerk with a spare coat, and a lie told just loud enough to save a life. The call that stayed with me. I've been a paramedic for over a decade now. I've seen the worst moments of people's lives play out in backyards, kitchens, alleys, and intersections. I've patched bullet wounds in the rain, performed CPR in grocery store aisles, and sat with the dying when all that was left to give was presence. But there's one call I still carry, and it came on Christmas Eve. Back then, I was working in a mid-sized city, but our coverage area stretched out into deep rural counties, long stretches of 2-lane blacktop between houses, where response time is measured in minutes that feel like hours. That night, I was on shift with my partner, Derek, and a brand new EMT, Matt, doing his field training. The day had been quiet, too cold and too close to the holiday for many accidents. We'd eaten the Christmas dinner some of the crew had cooked at the station and were half watching TV when the tones dropped. Dispatch said it was a fall. Woman hit her head, conscious and breathing. Rural address, about 15 minutes out. We rolled lights on. Halfway there, dispatch updated. The patient was now unconscious, still breathing. My gut tightened. As we turned onto the street, it lit up like a crime scene. Police cruisers, a sheriff's SUV, even a fire truck. For a simple head injury, That much backup was strange. An officer waved us through to the driveway, where a sedan sat running, driver's door open. A man, middle-aged, plain clothes, stood at the front of the car, hands in his pockets. In the driver's seat was a woman, head tilted back against the headrest, arms limp at her sides. Blood traced 2 lines down her face, one from her temple, one from her nose. She was moaning softly but didn't respond when I spoke. I did a sternum rub, nothing. I asked the man if she'd been drinking or using drugs. "A couple glasses of wine," he said. "No drugs?" I started thinking intracranial bleed, bad, but survivable if we moved fast. That's when an officer approached, holding something in a gloved hand. "We found this in the door pocket," he said. A revolver. I flipped the cylinder. One spent casing. Every assumption shifted. This wasn't a fall. We grabbed a seat collar and backboard. I climbed into the back seat to stabilize her head, and that's when I saw it, a grapefruit-sized hole in the back of her skull, the inside a dark red pool. A fragment of bone floated in it. Above her, the headliner was stippled with tiny shards, a halo of blood and brain matter baked into the fabric. Heat vapor still rose from the wound into the cold air. We moved fast then, trauma dressing over the wound, wrapped tight so nothing spilled. With help from the fire crew, we slid her onto the backboard, then onto the stretcher. As we lifted her into the ambulance, the man stepped forward, tears streaking his face. He kissed her cheek and whispered, "I love you, sweetheart." Inside, I prepared to intubate. With most of her cerebrum destroyed, she had no muscle tone. Her tongue had fallen back, blocking her airway. The laryngoscope revealed a small hole in the roof of her mouth, the bullet's entry point. I slid the tube between her vocal cords and secured it. Derek drilled an intraosseous line into her leg for access. Her vitals were bizarrely stable, normal blood pressure, oxygenation, heart rhythm. The brainstem was intact, still keeping the body's automatic functions going. But without higher brain activity, there was no coming back. We called ahead, activated the trauma team, and ran lights all the way in. After the transfer, we returned to the station. I looked down and saw specks of bone and blood on my pants, the dark stains on my shirt. The charge medic sent me home to shower. I came back, finished the shift, went through the motions. The next morning, around 9 a.m., I heard she'd been taken off life support. For years I told myself I'd handled it fine. But later, after a bad breakup and months of feeling on edge, I finally saw a psychologist. I was angry all the time. Cynical. Tense. I thought it was just my personality. It wasn't. Session after session, the same call kept surfacing. My psychologist told me I had PTSD. I didn't want the label, but deep down I knew it fit. I tell this story in detail not to shock, but because people need to understand, a moment like that doesn't just end when the patient dies. It ripples outward, to families, to friends, to first responders who replay it in their heads for years. If you're thinking about ending your life, you may believe it will make things easier. It won't. You won't be here to see the wreckage it leaves, but it will be there. I've seen it. I've carried it. And I can tell you, there are always other options. Talk to someone. A friend, a family member, a professional, even a stranger. Call the suicide hotline, 988 in the U.S., 1-800-273-8255. Go to the ER. Call 911. I've seen lives end in silence. I've also seen them turn around in the space of one honest conversation. Please, choose the second. Let me know what you think in the comments. This was Tell Me What Happened. I'll see you in the next story.